So this is just the resource for where you can find the WATI, but again, if you want me to email it to you, I'd be happy to do that. It's a pretty exhaustive document with a lot of resources inside of it, but you can download chapters, you can download portions, you can download whatever sections you want. One thing I mentioned yesterday is in addition to their all-inclusive resource, they do now have a separate one that you can download that's specific to students on the autism spectrum. So if you're particularly interested in AT supports for students on the autism spectrum, make sure you download that separate resource because it's really, really good. So this is the functional areas, the 12 functional areas that the WATI resources address. The ones that are highlighted in color are the ones that we're going to spend a little bit of time on this morning. I'm going to start out with the area of communication, and then we'll turn it over to Jill and to Jennifer. In terms of communication, when we talked about this yesterday, we're talking about those students with complex communication needs, the ones who are unable to rely solely on their verbal, gestural, or other nonverbal forms of communication. They may be verbal, but they're not able to rely on their verbal communication solely as a way to engage in getting their needs known or in that full range of communication opportunities that all of us participate in on a regular basis. So we're talking about a wide range of students. We use a framework of user profiles that was developed by my colleague, Dr. Marilyn Buzelich, which was designed to address the notion that all individuals with complex communication needs are candidates for AAC supports. And it's based on a continuum with the goal of moving students through phases with an emphasis on the skills. It's not just about the tool, it's really about what skills are we teaching these kids, what skills need to be developed to enable them to move on through the continuum and access more complex language and more complex communication tools. So if we're not building those skills and being really clear about what they are that a student needs to have in place to move up that continuum, we're really not doing our job as AAC specialists. And so we want to be really clear about what those skills are that we're developing at each step along the way and put the resources in place to support the student in progressing forward. This framework was also designed to assist the speech language pathologist in matching a particular profile, what a student's currently able to do or may need to move up the continuum, with tools that are currently available on the market so that that's a little less of a fuzzy process for speech language pathologists to engage in. This is something that we cover really extensively in an AAC specialist training that we do in Placer County. It's a 6-day across the span of a school year. Participants actually do an assessment as part of the training process and do some funding, do a funding report to work on the funding aspect of AAC devices. So if you know any SLPs that might be interested, we are doing that again next year, I think starting in November. And it'll run through March. Just get a hold of me in the back and we'll make sure you get that information. So I'm going to talk just really briefly about emergent level AAC users. These are our chronologically or developmentally young children who have limited or no prior experience or exposure to AAC. They may not yet understand the relationship between visual symbols and concepts, so that's a huge part of what we do in our early intervention with these kids. Or they may not have the physical access skills to access displays with more than one symbol. So that would be the focus of where our intervention would be at that point in time. They may be starting to follow directions within routines and familiar activities. They may have a few messages that are communicated well and are often using vocal or nonverbal communication behaviors. So that's kind of what these kids look like at this point in the profile. The skills that we're working on, the things that you'll see in their IEPs that are actual goals that we're working on to develop, is first and foremost, we want to give these kids participation opportunities. We want to look at their school day, look at the activities, look at the routines, and make sure they're maximally participating throughout the day using some form of voice output communication so that they get that perception of themselves as an active communicator and start to understand what it means to tell somebody what they want to do or what they want next. We provide opportunities for the student to use those messages in a variety of language forms. We don't want to just give them nouns. We don't want to just give them labels for things. We want to give them action words. We want to give them descriptive words. We want to give them functions of communication. We want them to understand what it means to greet someone, what it means to request something, which is the more typical things we program into those early devices. But we also want them to direct action and to tell people information and to comment and to ask questions. So that's a real focus for us as a language learning experience. We also are really spending a lot of time working on developing their ability to associate the visual symbols with language concepts, because that's a huge bridge that they need to learn to gap in order to move forward in their progression. And we want them to do that for larger symbol sets. We want to branch that to 2, to 3, to 4, to handling larger arrays of symbols at a time. And for a subset of our students, we're also at this point in time working on their access skills. So those that aren't able to point to accurately a picture icon and get into that cell, we may be looking at alternate forms of accessing communication. So this is just a sampling of the kinds of tools that we're looking at. Many of these are familiar to most of you. They're available in a lot of different classrooms. They're tools that typically allow for programming 1 or 2 messages to get those participation activities across the day, or they're sequenced or randomized messages, so kids are able to do things like say the Pledge of Allegiance in sequence, or tell the parts of the cooking activity that you're engaging in, a variety of things. Entry-level users. These are our users who are now demonstrating more skill or readiness for aided forms or symbolic communication systems. They're now discriminating between 2 or more visual symbols. They're readily using symbols to make requests for things they want. They're using more spontaneous nonverbal forms of communication, because we're always working with those still at that emergent level as well. We want kids to develop as much nonverbal form of communication as we possibly can. They've been using pictures or icons or symbols, and this seems to be both increasing their comprehension and expression. At these early levels, we're not just asking kids to use the systems, we're asking everybody in the environment to do aided language stimulation, to model the use of the symbols flexibly and interactively within the setting, so that they're developing that comprehension as well. And for the most part, our kids at this level are attempting to communicate using those systems in their most frequent or motivating situations or favorite activities. So sometimes that's where we're really having to put our emphasis, is moving into not just your most favorite things, but into communicating about other things as well. So these are the types of skills we would work on at this particular point in time: accessing larger vocabulary sets. Our overlays, what's on the actual visual display at this point in time, they're usually designed as what we call context specific. What that means is the user has everything necessary to participate in that one activity or situation, like snack time or playing a particular game. The students not yet at this level navigating to other page sets or throughout other displays in a system, although we may be working on that navigation skill at the same time, but at this point we're really focusing on the interaction. The student is usually at this level selecting one button to say a whole message. We're not having that expectation yet to put words together in sentences. We want them to understand what the interaction's about and to be able to participate fully. But we are working on expanding, again, those range of forms and functions, initiating on their own. We're starting to work on activities that have a beginning and a middle and an end, so they understand the sequence of what they say and what their partner responds back with them, so they get those concepts. This is just a sampling. This is probably one of the areas of devices where we have the most options out there on the market. There are lots and lots of tools that support students at this level. They're typically static screen, meaning that you change a paper or laminated overlay in the device for each activity you're doing, and they can have anywhere from 4 to 40 messages typically on a screen. Some devices allow you to change that subset as you move along. Some are more specific at one set of numbers of locations. Most of these devices have digitized or recorded speech at this level. which means we keep the cost really, really down for this level of devices as well. Some of them will have a set number or levels that you can have. How many activities can I program and maximize this device? And some of them are starting to incorporate more barcode technology, so you actually save the recordings in the overlay and can have an unlimited supply of overlays to go along with your activities, both at home and at school. So there's lots and lots of variety in terms of what's available. I'm going to move us up quickly to our intermediate level AAC users. These are our kids where now we're really moving beyond a set of vocabularies that's going beyond about a 500 word system. They're using more variety in their forms and functions. They're resourceful in using their unaided communication. And we've worked on that ability to categorize words. So we're now having that expectation of them to be able to navigate to different pages of vocabulary because they understand how those are organized and where they would find things. The skills we're working on, learning to transition to topics of conversation, knowing what time it is in the routine, so what overlay do I go to find that vocabulary? Learning to respond to a variety of question forms. Again, this is what you might see in goals for a student at this level. Learning where to find messages appropriate to their context or activity or setting that they're in and be able to do that independently. And we're also starting to learn to put words together in simple sentences. The type of devices that would support us at this level are much more limited in the market. And really, I think that's primarily driven by the fact that we're getting into more dynamic screen devices at this point with synthesized speech, and our vendors, unfortunately, would prefer to put all the bells and whistles into every device because they get a more maximal price for that and not have a lot of devices on the market that really support us at this level. So we have a lot fewer options out there in terms of an intermediate level device. The type of tools that will support us, they can be static or dynamic screens, where selecting a button speaks a word or message, or that button can also navigate to another page now so that they're starting to incorporate that skill. Typically, these devices have digitized speech because we're not really talking about spelling at this point, but they could also come with synthesized speech because that's something that again, our manufacturers tend to put in to most of their devices now. We're beginning to introduce more of a language system that supports core words. So we're really looking at kids not having one button say the whole phrase or sentence, but one button and having to construct their own novel phrases or sentences. The kinds of skills we work with for an advanced level AAC users, these are usually our experienced system users, although I certainly also prescribed advanced level devices for 3 to 4-year-olds if they have the language skills to support that, because we certainly have kids at that age who do have the capability to even begin spelling. So you really have to evaluate that. Our users at this point are usually able to use a large pre-stored vocabulary set and to start generating novel language. They typically have or they're developing the literacy skills to support spelling. And many of them may also be able to take advantage of a lot of the additional features that are in these devices, like word prediction, and use their device to interface with the computer to complete classroom work or go on the internet to email a variety of things. So these are the skills that you might see on this student's IEP. Put words together in simple to complex sentences. We might be now asking these kids to learn how to change their own features or do their own programming of messages or words, use spelling or rate enhancement features to say things that aren't programmed in their system, learn to recognize their communication breakdowns and have strategies for supporting their partners when they don't understand them, and knowing how to instruct their unfamiliar partners regarding the system that they're using and their strategies. So these are typically our dynamic screen devices, where one button typically navigates to another page in the system. They typically have synthesized speech to support spelling, and most of the devices also come with a very robust language system, which supports a word-based system so that kids start to learn how to do core words and program in their own particular noun vocabulary.
Okay, I'm going to now move obviously away from communication and into some of the other areas of assistive technology related to educational productivity, and I'm going to start here with access to computers. So computer access is how we describe how people are going to interact with the computer, and if it's different, and if you can't do it the way that if I put a computer in front of you, then we're going to look at what we need to do in order to make that computer accessible to you. Whether that's something to do with the monitor, whether that's something to do with the keyboard or the mouse, that's what we're going to look at when we're looking at assistive technology. So when is it appropriate? Like I said, it's appropriate when a student cannot access the computer the way that you and I would be able to access the computer. And they need to do some type of task related to their education and curriculum that they can't do effectively. So most commonly, we're going to need to use these assistive technology supports with students who have physical disabilities, but they also might help with students who have visual impairments, some fine motor impairments, cognitive disabilities, or other challenges. So within all Macintosh and Windows computers, there are built-in accessibility features that you can access. And those will affect what the screen looks like, and they also will affect how the keyboard and the mouse work. Within Windows XP, you can find it, as you see here, in the control panel. In Vista and Windows 7, I believe it's both under ease of access, and maybe even Windows 8. And in Mac, you can find it in the universal access, which is within the system panel. So some of those features that are built into these systems, they're sticky keys, and that allows a user who can only maybe push one button at a time, can't do like Control V for paste, that it will hold, when you press the one button down, it'll maintain that hold so that they can press the other button down. Filter keys, which is called slow keys if you're on a Macintosh, and that'll ignore multiple repetitions of a key, so you only get one A and not 20. Mouse keys, that allows you to use the numeric keyboard in order to move the mouse and navigate across your screen. And then there's also visual display options, which can adjust the size of the font, the size of the icons, it can magnify your cursor, and it can also change the contrast of your screen if you need a different contrast. Okay, some standard keyboard adaptations that we have out there, that are still built in, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. Well, some of these are. The repeat rate, that's something you can do within the computer. Some things that are, again, standard, there's key guards that you can get to help prevent accidental key presses. There's labels you can use to stick on to the actual keys to make them stand out more, or have them raised a little bit if somebody needs that tactile feedback. There are things called moisture guards, which can protect not only from dust, moisture, drool, but maybe coffee. There's different types of pointing tools that are available. There are things called head pointers that actually are physical, that it can attach to some type of band on the head. But there's also, I'll get to the higher tech ones in the next slide, sorry. And then also there are keyboard masks, which can cover up some of the keys that maybe aren't used as frequently. Some of the standard mouse adaptations that you can do, you can customize how your mouse is working by changing the speed of the click. You can change what the left and right click buttons do. There's a way to adjust how quickly the mouse moves across your screen. And also, again, you can change the size of that cursor. There's also a way that you can, I just talked about that, you can reassign the buttons. The left and right click can be identified differently. Some rate enhancement features that are built into our computers, and usually in the Word programs. There's abbreviation expansion. In Microsoft Word, that would be autocorrect. There's a program that you can add on to a Mac that Jill has referred to up here called Type It For Me. Word prediction and completion, I'm sure that we're all familiar with that. We start typing and it either finishes our word or we spell it incorrectly and it fixes it for us. But some of the programs will actually read that word aloud so you can hear it as well. There are macros, which are shortcuts that will help you quickly add, like if you're repeating a name, for example, or to start a program, and then again, the autocorrection. In assistive technology, sometimes we're going to provide alternative keyboards for our students that maybe can't handle that standard QWERTY keyboard. Sometimes alternative layouts that we'll look at for students are keyboards that are alphabetical, or also there's another one that Jill will use, which is called the Dvorak, which has the letters and the consonants and the vowels arranged differently, which is really good, as she comments, for using a pointing device. So here are some examples of some different keyboards. The ergonomic ones, which we don't have an example of out there, which you've seen, I'm sure, open up and are more comfortable for your hands when they're typing. There are one-handed type or keyboards. Again, what Jill talked about, the Dvorak, well, she didn't talk about, she helped me, Dvorak arrangement for either right-handed, left-handed typing, or a half QWERTY keyboard. There are wireless keyboards, which obviously allow you to change the position and how close you're sitting to your computer and your monitor. There are also on-screen keyboards that you can use that are either accessed via a touch screen or with your mouse selecting the letters. Here are some examples of some mouse alternatives. You can see up there, there's a trackball, which may help somebody who can't move the mouse around on a mouse pad. There's a joystick, a touchpad, different types of mouse alternatives. Speech recognition is another type of technology that we can use when we're accessing the computer. And what that does is it converts words spoken into a microphone into text or commands. There are a lot of things, though, that need to be considered when you are looking at speech recognition. Your speech does need to be relatively clear when you're doing this. The programs have become a little more flexible in that, but you do need to understand how to use it, and you have to be able to do some consistent, clear speech in order to train that program to understand you and then to translate that speech into text. You do have to understand how to dictate, especially when you get to a little bit higher level. Those of you who have used Siri, if you have an iPhone, know that you need to say like period, new line, those types of things, otherwise it all runs together. In addition to that, you do have to understand, and the student's going to have to realize that after they do their speech to text, that they are going to have to go back and they are going to have to edit what they have written, because most likely it's not going to be perfect. So they're going to need to have to review that, identify where they need to go back in and edit that and be able to correct it. Sometimes this type of technology can be very frustrating in the beginning due to that training portion of it. There are now programs that are, like I said, a little more flexible and give the students a little bit easier time setting up that speech-to-text recognition so that it will support their voice and it will understand them, and therefore it will translate better into their text. But that type of assistive technology does require a lot of time from staff and a lot of times from family and the student as well to get through that training process in order for it to be an effective tool for that student. Some programs that are built into Windows Vista and Mac, it's built into Windows Vista. In Mac, they have something called speakable items that'll allow you to navigate on the computer. There's also an additional program for Mac called Mac Speech Dictate that you can get to work. The most commonly used program that we hear about, and it's also, I think, one of the most expensive, is Dragon Naturally Speaking. But that does have a very, very good speech synthesizer, and as you see, the accuracy rate is really high when that training is done well and the student can access it. One of the programs that we use a lot in our AT program is SpeakQ, and that is designed for students who have learning disabilities, and it also can work in conjunction with another program called WordQ, and that's a word prediction program. The nice thing about it is that the reading demands for the training portion of it are reduced. So the passage that the students are reading is not as technical and as complicated as the ones that you would find in Dragon Naturally Speaking. Okay, another way that we can access or provide assistive technology to access the computer is using eye gaze and eye tracking. When you're doing this, you are using, basically there's a camera that's recognizing your eyes and the movement of your eyes to navigate and do things on your screen. The way that you make things activate is either dwelling, which means holding your eyes in one place for a while, or blinking, and that will activate something on the computer. I am a speech pathologist, and there are several AAC devices out there that do work primarily with this eye tracking software, and it is pretty amazing to watch students communicate by just moving their eyes and having the device speak for them. But I also know that not only there's a device now that I think Toby puts out that you can actually attach to a PC computer that will allow you to interface with the computer just using your eyes, which is amazing. The users do have to be able to move their eyes around, not necessarily their head, but their eyes definitely have to be able to move. And sometimes some of the eye problems will make that access a little bit more difficult. So you're going to have to evaluate if it's good access, even if they do have a little bit of difficulty moving their eyes. Typically, though, what is nice about these is that head movement doesn't affect it. So I have, for example, one of my students, their head, they don't hold their head very still, but because their eyes are focused and it's picking up their eyes, they are able to do this. So that's something to take into consideration. Just because you have a lot of movement, if their eyes can still make those adjustments, it still might be something you'd like to consider if there's no other access. Then there's also switch access, and that would be when you would be inserting using some type of interface, a switch, which is it could be a single button or two buttons for somebody to access the computer. When we're looking at communication, we sometimes talk about switch scanning, which is when things are moving across the computer and then you're selecting when you hear the one that you want. This really can seem to be a very long and slow process, but for some of our students who can't access the computer in any other way, it can become very effective. And a lot of students who do learn how to do this skill of scanning, they're comfortable with what they're doing on the computer, so it actually will speed up what they're doing because they know they don't have to wait for it to go through everything. They know when to click to quickly get them to what they want. But it does require a lot of time and training and teaching. And definitely if you have a student that you're looking at switch access for either access to the computer or communication, you probably are going to want to call in either an AAC specialist or an AT specialist. When you are hooking up a switch to a computer, you're going to need what's called a switch interface because switches typically don't plug directly into a computer like a mouse would. There are several companies that do produce switch interfaces, and once you plug them in, they're very easy to use. And you can usually attach more than one switch to do a variety of different things. Companies do have switch accessible software out there, so some that are developed specifically to work on cause and effect, choice making, early literacy skills, some that will even allow the children to independently take tests where you the teacher can enter in the test and the information and then they can answer the questions using their switches. Some other programs have built-in options for switch use like Classroom Suite and Clicker. Also BoardMaker programs allow you to use switches. And then there are other standard software programs that can be accessed through the use of a switch with additional hardware or software.
Okay, I'm going to talk about writing and some tools that we use. Okay, so low-tech solutions to improve the motor aspects of writing. We can look at environmental and seating adaptations. A lot of people and classroom teachers try a variety of pencils and pens, pencil grips, adapted paper. There are a lot of different types of adapted paper out there. Using worksheets, writing templates, using use of pre-written words and phrases. There are a lot of low-tech things like rubber stamps, label makers, and fill-in-the-blank worksheets. Oh, and we do have website resources for you on the website. Mid and high-tech solutions we're still at motor aspects of writing. We talked about label maker, portable talking dictionary, portable word processors. These are really small devices like you see down in the corner there. They just do word processing, and they usually have word prediction included in them. And some of them actually have speech output as well. We've got alternative keyboards, alternative access, word prediction software, voice recognition software, which Jennifer talked about earlier. Picture supports to write from, pictures with words. Combining those words with pictures is great. Using word cards, pocket dictionaries, thesaurus. I mean, these are some pretty simple things too. Again, writing templates and guides, story starters. Portable talking spell checkers are great. Franklin makes some products that have some speech output. When we get to the mid and high-tech solutions, we're getting into some software. Word processing software is the most basic thing that we can all pop up on our computers, but we can add things like talking word processing, multimedia software. Kidspiration and inspiration is great. There's a picture up here in the right. It's a way to organize thoughts in a pictorial view, and with one click it turns it into an outline view that can be edited and then further expanded upon. Word prediction software, again, most of us know what word prediction software is at this point. We talked a little bit about voice recognition software. And we're going to move right on to reading. Now, some of these products cross over with reading and writing, organization, because a lot of the software products that are being developed and have been around for a while are really starting to have built-in features that really cross over into different areas. So some simple adaptations for working with text are highlighters and highlighting tape, colored overlays, color-coded strips, adapting books, page flippers and tabs, automatic page turners. These are all low-tech ways to adapt. Handheld devices, we've got talking dictionaries and reading pens. Reading pens are actually pretty difficult. You've got to have really good fine motor skills to use these reading pens. They kind of sound really great. Ooh, a pen, and you put it over the text and it reads it. Well, you've got to be very accurate with your fine motor to do that. Use of pictures and symbols with text. We do this a lot. Adding pictures can be very, very helpful for students who are struggling to read. Combining them and making that association between the word and the picture can be really helpful. And this strategy has had a lot of research and is definitely reported as an effective strategy for emerging readers. Resources for pictures and text. So when we look about combining the text with the pictures, how do we do that? There's different softwares that let you do that, and picture it, clicker, writing with symbols. Writing with symbols is great. Basically, you type what you want to have come out, and the pictures just automatically pop up with the words. It's really simple. We've got IntelliTools Classroom Suite, PixWriter, and BoardMaker Plus. BoardMaker Plus has a new feature in it, which is called Symbolate. It is great. Again, it's much like writing with symbols. You just type and the pictures pop up. Newspapers, there's News to You. This is a great resource for age-appropriate news information paired with pictures. Online resources, Symbol World is fantastic. It's a free site, and there's an absolute ton of resources there paired with pictures. It also has a plug-in, so if the student needs text-to-speech, it will also utilize text-to-speech with the pictures as it highlights the text. And then there's the Unique Learning System curriculum, which is a great scaffolded system that pairs symbols with text. Here's an example of News to You and what that looks like. Electronic text and ebooks. This is a big area. It allows students to access text which they might not otherwise be able to access with the traditional print. So there are a lot of downloadable e-text out there. They're subscription-based. Their CDs come from publishers now, and text can also be scanned from a paper copy. You have to have a special kind of printer called an OCR printer or scanner, which can translate that text into the proper format. Commercial e-text products, we've got IntelliTools, Leapfrog, Planet Wobble, Start to Finish books by Don Johnston, the Literacy Starters, You Can Do Little Books, WiggleWorks. These are my favorite free downloadable ebooks. We've got Starfall, lots of people have heard of Starfall. We've got the International Children's Digital Library. Project Gutenberg is a wonderful resource for literature that has gone beyond its copyright time, and so it's free. And not only at Project Gutenberg do they have the ebooks, but they also have audiobooks as well, and different types of formats, MP3s and that sort of thing. We've got Bookshare. Bookshare is really important in education. We have found that that is the key way to get digital ebooks for no cost for our students who qualify for this program. And we've got TeacherTap, and of course local library has actually your local library online will have wonderful resource of ebooks. In Placer County, we have our library system is connected with Tumble Talking Books, so we can access that for free as well, which is great for our younger students. And of course, we've got fee-based, One More Story, Reading A to Z, Tumble Books. Again, it's normally a subscription, but if you go through Placer County Library and click on their links, you can access it for no cost. And of course, Amazon sells all sorts of ebooks. How do we read these ebooks? Well, we've got the portable e-readers that we are familiar with, like the Kindle and the iPad. We have more specialized audio readers that students will use, like Victor Reader, Classmate. And one thing, this is where some of these softwares cross over, is when we look at the WordQ software that we were talking about earlier, or any of these e-text readers that are softwares, you can pretty much copy and paste or import e-text into these readers, and you'll be able to read it either on the computer or on tablets. Audiobooks. These can be digital, listened to on MP3 players, cell phones, handhelds. They're commercially available from Amazon and iTunes, and also they are available from recordings for the blind and dyslexic. Project Gutenberg, like I mentioned before, also has audiobooks to download, and the public library. Text readers for free. They do come with the operating systems nowadays. Sometimes they're not that great, and students sometimes need to hear a little bit higher quality voice, and that's when we get into some other programs like ClickSpeak, Adobe Reader, PowerTalk. Read Please. Natural Reader is one of my favorites right now. Microsoft Reader, iSpeak, Web Anywhere. The commercially available ones really have been around for a while. IntelliTools does the IntelliTalk and the Write Out Loud. We've got the Read Out Loud, the Win and Kurzweil 3000 and Read and Write Gold. And we're going to move on to math. Manipulatives, low tech. We may have to adapt what is typically used. Just adjusting the size, the type, attaching to Velcro, adding handles, that sort of thing. There's a great site called MathCats where you can learn all about making your own manipulatives. Stamp sets are great to use, magnetic shapes. MathLine is a product from Wright, which is a great product. Adapted math paper. There are a lot of math papers out there downloadable from different websites. And at Onion Mountain Tech, they have a lot of low-tech math kits, as well as a lot of other low-tech items. Adapted math tools include calculators, which have large keys, smaller keys, larger displays. They can talk, have audio, and also have tactile input. There's this thing called the Coinulator, which is kind of a fun thing if you're working on math. We've got math keyboards and FactMaster, portable low-tech drills and practice tools from Amazon, and you can see some pictures down below. There are adapted measuring devices, tapes, thermometers, switch-activated items. We've got time tools, smart charts, scripts. Down below there we've got Touch Math. We've got lots of websites here. And again, we'll have these for you, right, Jill? At the are these on available? If you email, we'll make sure you get all of these. For digital access to math, this is the trickiest part. So one of the best ways I found for some lower level math for students who just cannot use the standard pencil and paper, but who need a simple layout on the screen using the computer is the MathPad and MathPad Plus, which is up on top. And this is a way to work out problems without pencil and paper, and it's very simple. And you can actually, the teacher can input a set of problems as well. There are visual math tools within Kidspiration software, and you can see that a picture right there. There's some basically visual manipulatives and lots of activities. There are on-screen calculators that can be used, and large ones too. At the mrjennings.co.uk, it's a great large on-screen calculator. Alternative keyboards and portable math processors can be used with IntelliKeys, CalcuScribe, and of course visual manipulatives. If you go to the National Archive of Visual Manipulatives, it's amazing. There are just tons of online no-cost activities with using manipulatives for math, except on screen.
The UC Davis Mind Institute was created in 1998 with a promise to find cures for neurodevelopmental disorders. Every day, our physicians and researchers come closer to fulfilling that promise. Their groundbreaking research on autism, Fragile X syndrome, chromosome 22q11.2 deletion syndrome, ADHD, and other brain disorders are helping children achieve their fullest potential. Please visit our website to find out more about current studies, upcoming events, and how you can help make a difference.